Welcome back to Small College Conversations. I'm Kristen Urkel. I'm joined by Tanya Hockman, Director of Athletics at Malone. Thanks for being on.
Happy to be with you, Kristen.
Well, you were a lifer there at Malone, 4-year two-sport letter winner, master's degree, 4 years as an assistant coach, 22 as the head coach, 470 wins, now 5 years as the AD. Okay, to start, what was the attraction there at Malone?
Yeah, I would say as a student, I certainly came in trying to find where's my fit. And at the time, Malone University was an NAIA program about half an hour from where I grew up. So mom and dad were close by, and I could live out my college dreams of playing volleyball and basketball, and it worked particularly well for me. And then after graduation, I honestly was just trying to search my fit, and I really loved athletics and found that there were opportunities to stay either as a grad assistant or volunteer at the university. And so I chose to do that. And I really felt like the mission fit and the alignment was so strong. So honestly, I've never really left the university. I came as a student in 1990, and I'm still here, obviously in a much different role, but found my time to be so enriching. Met my husband at the university. And so there's just been a lot of alignment from start to finish, which I haven't hit the finish line yet, thankfully, but it's just been a great fit for me personally.
Incredible stuff. I mean, that's just so rare, isn't it, in this business?
It is, but Malone is a special place.
Yeah.
There's two of our coaches currently on staff that have served here for over 50 years. I'm not sure if there's many other universities that can boast of that. We have others, obviously, that are new to the Malone community, but we have a lot of people that come to the university, find the community, feel like they really fit, and they stay. So it is a special place.
For you, moving from being a head coach to the AD role, that's a little bit hard. When you're a coach, you're just kind of born to coach. Was that a tough transition for you?
I found that there's a lot of similarities between coaching and being a leader of people as an athletic director. So you're always managing resources, and you're always managing personnel. And so there's a lot of overlap in terms of what that looks like at the coaching level, and then what that looks like in an administrative role. I think probably the more difficult transition piece was moving from peer to the person that has to make the final decision. And I'm grateful because I feel like I've always had a lot of support amongst our department. And so there wasn't a lot of turbulence moving from coach to athletic director. There was a lot of support. And the transition happened during COVID. So that was obviously one of those interesting periods of time that we were all just trying to navigate. And originally, my plan was not to leave coaching. We thought we had a leader for the program as the athletic director, and then that kind of fell through. And then I just stayed on in the role. And I think having about a year as the athletic director in the interim role really positioned me well to say, okay, maybe it's time to leave coaching and spend my whole time trying to invest and enrich the lives of our coaches so that they can continue to do what they need to do to be successful.
How much has the institutional knowledge of just being there at Malone really been an asset to you in leading your current coaches and staff?
Yeah, I think a lot of my success is grounded in having touch points across campus. I was in a role as a senior woman administrator prior to taking on the athletic director position. And that opened doors for me to serve on a lot of committees across campus. So I had touch points with a lot of people, whether it was on the academic side of the house or in advancement, just different areas across campus. So it helped me to have a working knowledge of the university as a whole and understand the scope of what we were doing and how athletics played one part, although very integral part, in the health and vitality of the university. So that was really instrumental in me being ready and equipped. And I think when I stepped into the role, it also helped bring credibility with constituents across campus. There was a sense of that who I was a known commodity in our arena and our environment. And so that respect really helped me to have difficult conversations or engage with people where it might have been more difficult for someone coming in that didn't already have those relationships or an understanding of how the university works. So I think it was a very critical piece to the success of that transition.
Now, Malone has made some sports sponsorship changes over the handful of years. How do you think, or what's your perspective of the convergence of athletics, enrollment, and fit?
Yeah, so a lot of our sports sponsorship that we've looked at has been just really intentional. We begin by looking at what do we have the capacity to help and sponsor and support. So we're not looking at sports sponsorship strictly from an enrollment standpoint, although that obviously is a
Sure.
significant factor, but that's not the end all be all for us. A lot of it for us to add women's and men's lacrosse and stunt was, do we have facilities that are needed for us to support the programs? And then another big piece for us was, who would lead the programs, because we believe that leadership really drives the success or failure of a program. And can we find the right leadership that will sustain us, not just for a year or two, but for decades, hopefully, that we're sponsoring the sport. So we're looking long term in terms of leadership. And then the other thing we're looking at is what's happening in our conference, what's happening in our footprint. Are there other universities sponsoring sports that make sense for us to add? So while enrollment is one piece of that, there's a lot of layers to making decisions about sports sponsorship, and all of it is informed by data and just making decisions about what makes sense for the university at this moment in time. And so that really is driving the direction of sports sponsorship for us at Malone.
Do you currently have any JV programs? I think you have had at certain points, right?
We've had quite a few, and we've actually kind of pulled back from some of our JV offerings. And a lot of the move from maybe sponsoring JV has been, are we doing it well?
Mhm.
And if the answer to that is not really, the student experience isn't what we want it to be, that's when we've decided maybe we need to go in a different direction. So we still sponsor JV programs for our men's soccer and baseball. And then women's basketball, we have discontinued JV programs for women's soccer and men's basketball because those two were not flourishing. And then we've kind of pivoted and said, maybe we need to look at sports that are not NCAA sports. So maybe more of a club direction versus a JV focus.
Mhm.
So we are sponsoring esports, and we are looking potentially to add cheer. So shifting a little bit away from NCAA sponsored sport to more of a club focus. And we think that that might be the direction that we'll move a little bit more quickly towards in the future.
You talked about facilities. Let's talk about Pioneer Park. You opened that a few years ago, $1.6 million project. Talk to me the impact of that and what's next on your facility priority list.
Yeah, wow. Pioneer Park has been a tremendous blessing to our campus. We have been able to add men's and women's lacrosse, which was one of our objectives. We could have never added those two sports without that facility. What are we looking to do next? A lot of it's going to be donor driven. Most of what we have done, whether it's renovations to current spaces or just what's on the horizon, has really been driven by what are our donors wanting and how are they going to contribute to the success of making those projects happen. So currently, we're actually looking more at renovations of current facilities. We're going to do a complete renovation of Osborne Hall, which is our gymnasium. We're really, really excited about that. And then we have had some traction in the track and field space. We're not close enough to the finish line to feel like we can say that that's exactly the direction that we're leaning, but we have some people who have a vested interest in seeing that program thrive and hopefully having opportunities for home track meets. So a lot of this is really going to be driven by what do our donors want to do and where is that funding coming from?
Now, you're a member of D2 as well as the NCCAA. What benefits do you see that added membership provides your student athletes?
Yeah, we have loved our alignment and our mission fit with the NCCAA. It's been outstanding. It's been great for our students when they've been able to compete. First and foremost, alignment, but secondly, championship experiences. Men's and women's golf and track and field, indoor and outdoor, have had opportunities to compete on the national stage against other Christian universities, and it has been just transformational for them. So more great opportunities for our student athletes to compete in championships is always a wonderful add for us. And to do it with other universities that are mission fit, it just adds a layer of just specialness to those events that we're sharing with them.
I want to get your take on this. The G Magazine, year one of its media deal with FloSports. What impact have you seen in the first year so far?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good. First and foremost, it was a conference initiative. So it took a while for the members to say, yeah, this is the direction that we need to go in. What have we seen as wonderful outcomes? I think it's challenged us to look at our broadcast, ask the question, are we producing great content so that those who are watching are saying it's worth the membership price that we're paying, the subscription that we're paying? So we're asking that question a lot. Secondly, it's helped us just say, how can we talk about Malone and share the vision for who we are to a much broader audience, right? We're reaching a larger scale. A lot more people are watching. So we have to ask, what is our narrative? How can we share our story and do it in an effective way? So that's another thing that we've been challenged with. And certainly everybody loves finding new revenue sources. So that's been for us really good to say, here's another way that we can potentially be generating some revenue that will help us to give back to our student athlete experience and enhance what we're doing overall. So have there been some bumps in the road? Absolutely. There's been some bumps, and certainly we'll keep growing as we continue on in this relationship with FloSports, but we've really appreciated the way they've challenged us to get better and think about sharing our story with a much bigger audience that we didn't have before.
Long term, do you anticipate what type of impact from generating resources to invest in? What would you upgrade in? I mean, broadcast alone, or you mentioned it supporting student athletes. Is anything specific come to mind?
Well, certainly I think we're going to have to ask first and foremost, how do we improve our broadcast?
Yeah.
So we're going to reinvest in that space for sure. And then, some of the things that we're going to do is put money back into some of our facilities. We'd like to continue to upgrade facilities. We think the places that they train and they compete in, we want those to be outstanding spaces, places that they're really proud to be in and that we love to host people. So we're going to put more money into our facilities. And then we hope just in general to help out with championship experiences. It's expensive when you get to postseason, it's not an easy thing to say, okay, we're going to play 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 additional contests. And that hits your operational budget. So how can we help those teams who are having success feel like they don't have to worry about crunching numbers, raising more money, and trying to meet the needs that they have for their team? So reinvesting into those championship experiences for our students is also part of what we're going to use that money for.
At the top of the show, we mentioned that you're a very successful head volleyball coach, 470 plus wins. You obviously assess coaches quite well. You've been in that role. I mean, how much do you pull from that going, okay, I remember being in these shoes, and how much do you think about like maybe the way that you were assessed early on and maybe how you would have done it early on versus how do you do it now with all those wins under your belt and all that experience?
I think if you've been a coach, you're always going to be a coach. And I see the athletic director very much coaching coaches, right? Like shepherding my group of people, which is now our coaches. So I don't think you ever lose that filter once you've lived in those shoes. So I'm deeply empathetic to our coaches. I do think in the 5 years that I've been away from coaching, that the position has changed. Certainly there's a lot that is the same, but with multiple transfers and the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, I think it's become increasingly more difficult for coaches to retain the talent that they have on their team. And the pressure, the social pressure that they're feeling now, the athletes feel it, and so do the coaches. So there's increased pressure to win. There's pressure to retain students. And so I think I have even more empathy for them in terms of the role and what they have to deal with on the day-to-day. And then add with that the resourcing. Nothing gets cheaper in what we're doing. Everything has a price tag attached to it, inflation. And so how do we help them close those budget gaps and raise revenue so they can have all the experiences they want to have with their team? So I'm trying to walk alongside them and support them the best that I can. When it comes to the day-to-day, how are you doing as a coach? I don't think that's ever going to change in how I evaluate them. Like, Are you able to connect with your student athletes? Are you relational? Can you hold a standard and stick to the standard? Are you able to understand the mission of the university and live that out day to day? Those things are non-negotiables in terms of staying in the seat and being a good coach. But certainly there's a lot more pressure now than there used to be. And I do think, it's harder to retain even your coaches because the pressure's there, right? And so from my seat, I see that the same pressures exist, that I may not have as many people saying that they want to stay for 20, 30, 40, and 50 years within our department because it's hard. It's hard to retain people. There's a lot of pressure. So the more I can help equip people to be successful in their role, I think the better I am at doing my job, and that's just to support them. So
From someone who has coached volleyball for years and years, what changes, if any, would you advocate in the sport of volleyball?
You know what? They've made some really good changes this past year. I really want to applaud Division II membership for passing the NPI. So that's going to take a lot of the work that RAC did and trying to figure out rankings and ease that burden on that RAC committee. And now we're moving in a direction too, where volleyball is adding substitutions from 15 to 18. So I think that's a great addition and the right move because you have larger rosters, more and more, Division 3 and 2 have large rosters a lot of times. And so how do you give opportunities for student athletes when you're restricting the number of substitutions? So the additional 3 subs, I think, is going to be super helpful for our coaches in thinking about how to utilize their personnel. So I'm really affirming of that. I think that for safety purposes, changing the center line violation was also a nice change when it comes to rules in volleyball. And I think it's just going to help eliminate some of those, contact under the net issues that have been problematic for people. If there's one thing I could change, I would certainly love for them to look at postseason matchups. That first round in NCAA postseason to eliminate conference teams playing each other would probably be the first thing I would say, please, let's look at that. Let's make this change. I think for our student athletes to say, hey, we're in the postseason, and then to look across the net and see somebody they've already played, a team that they've played 3 times, 2 or 3 times already in the conference. It doesn't feel like postseason. And so eliminating that first round matchup and making sure that it's not a conference opponent, I think we can figure that out. Division III has figured it out. I think Division II can figure that out. We've got a lot of bright minds that can rearrange those things and still keep with that regional model that Division II is known for. So that would be the one thing I would certainly push for.
Okay, stepping back a really far view here, over the next 5 years, what area of small college athletics will demand the biggest mindset shift, in your opinion?
I just think we have to find a sustainable model. The pressure, the financial pressure that everybody feels, I think at some point this is going to break unless we can find a model that works. So how do we look at collegiate sport and refocus on what is our chief aim here? Are we trying to make progress towards degree, graduate student athletes, help them to be equipped for their vocational career? How can we do that in a way that is financially responsible and makes a lot of sense? We cannot keep up the pace or try to match what Division I is doing. We have to double down on, we're a Division II institution. We need to figure out how this financial model is going to work. I think the other thing too, a lot of small schools are trying to figure out how they grow enrollment through sport. That's not necessarily the direction we're taking at our university, but certainly that's the model that many are. How do you do that in a way that doesn't add pressure to your game administrators, your sports information directors, your sports medicine personnel? At some point in time, that life and the balance has to happen. And so we want to keep good people in collegiate sport, and we have to figure out how we can do that while adding different options for sports sponsorship. So how can we do that? Do we add more support personnel? And if we can't add support personnel, how do we give them the breaks that they need so that they can actually enjoy having time away from sport, feel refreshed and refueled and ready to go and do their job to the best of their ability? So those are two things that just come to the forefront of my thinking as we're thinking about long-term, what do we need to think about as we move forward in college sports?
So well stated, Tanya. Thank you so much for your time and insight. Continued success.
Thank you so much.